Hi, Lisa Gifford here, and today we're going to go over the Grandma's Fan Block Template Set. There are 3 pieces to the Grandma's Fan block, and so I'm going to show each one of them to you. They're all made just like all the Martelli templates with that great get a grip on the back, so it's going to hold your fabric while you're cutting, and you can cut multiple layers with this. So this one here I call the large L. This one here is the blades. And this is the quarter circle. You're going to need to cut out 6 blades, 1 quarter circle, and then 1 of the large L's to make the whole block. And this is the block that we're going to be making. Now the Grandma's Fan is a very, very old block. It has been around forever. And it's one of those blocks that's extremely versatile in what and how you do in your layout. But this one actually is where you're going to be learning a little bit about sewing on a curve. You've got a very tight, a sort of a tight curve here and a very looser curve here. But here's the thing, whether you have never sewn with curves or you're wanting to learn curves, this is a really great project for starting it because it's very, very easy to do. And of course, when you're using the Martelli templates, everything's going to fit together very nicely. And I got a couple of little tricks and hints that I'm going to give you along the way on sewing this block. So this one here is showing you one that is completely finished. This block is, let me make sure I'm going to get the right measurement. It is a 12-inch block, so you're going to square it up to a 12-inch block, and though that's what it is unfinished, so once it's sewn, it's 11.5 inches. Here's another one that I had done, and just showing you how you could lay it out in so many different ways. If you continued off in this pattern, it would look like it was like weaving through. You could sew 4 of these together and you'd have a circle. It's just so many different layouts that you could do if you wanted it to be, you know, just any way. Just make a bunch of them and then just play with them and have fun. This is also one of those projects that would be a great scrap buster if you wanted to be a very scrappy quilt. This is one that I had just done, showing it more in a traditional look. And then the one I'm showing here that Zeke might pan out to show a little bit here on the wall. This is where I just took 4 of them and just kind of made like a little bit of a table runner. Again, if I wanted to add some more to them, I could have where it half circles. I could have it where it'd be a chain. I could just have it in any different direction that you'd want it to be. So just make it and have fun with it. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to need some fabrics. And I already got some pre-cut right here, so I just got a variety. I'm doing exactly like this one here, this purple one. So I just got 6 different fabrics and just cut them with what I call the fan blade. And then I got my quarter circle, and then here's the L piece. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to use these cutters and use these templates for doing your cutting. I think it's probably very important that you'd have this cut more on a straight of grain. I would probably have this one cut where I have my fabric either going this way or this way. I don't think that I would be cutting this on a scrap where I have a lot more stretch going in through here. So you would just have this and cut this out. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, I don't think it matters for it whether you have a reverse or not. So I got my template down on my fabric and I've got my 45 and I can easily cut this with my 45. So I'm just going to cut and just follow this curve around. Make sure it's all coming apart. And then cut here. Because it's got that get a grip, I can spin it around and finish my cuts. This is just showing you how easy it is to use the template to do all of our cutting. So here's my right side, and again, here's my right side. So it doesn't matter, you don't have that, that polar opposite or whatever it is. It's going to be awesome. It'll work for both ways if you have 2 layers of fabric that you're going to be cutting. The fan blades, again, the same thing. You have your fabric, and this is one of those projects that would be great for if you're doing lots and lots of scraps. So you can just kind of stack up your scraps and do your cutting. So if I wanted to cut out, say, a bunch of blades at once, so here's 4 pieces of fabric. I got my blade here, and I also was able to cut this out with my 45. It just was easy to get these angles right here pretty easily. So I've just got my fabric underneath here. And this is cutting through 4 layers. And then just following this curve. And there I've got 4 of them cut here. And the quarter circle is where I just take it and I lay it on here. And I like having this one where I've got my grains either going crossway or this way. Need a little bit of that bias right here. So I've got it laying on my fabric, and I'm just going to, same thing, just cut around. Cut, cut, and then I've got 2 of them ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and take my pieces that I've already pre-cut. I got my blades, my L shape, and my quarter circle. And we're going to go to the sewing machine. We're going to go ahead and whip this up real fast for you. All right, so I've kind of laid out my pieces and how I want them to go. And that's just a preference for me. I've got 3 darks and 3 lights, and I kind of wanted to alternate them out. So I'm just going to take 2 of them, and I'm just going to, this is one of those projects that's great for chain piecing. So I'm just going to lay one on top of the other, and I'm just going to just chain piece these through. And I'm going to sew this at 1/4 inch. Right, so after I get these clipped apart, and so here's hint number 1. So if you see on this one here, I just went ahead and sewed them all together, and then I sewed all of my seams to one side. But you could also take them, as I did on this one, you can press your seams open. So again, it's your preference on how you want it to be. I did find that it laid a little bit flatter by pressing my seams open, but it didn't make any difference on when I was sewing the curves. So that's what I wanted to see, if it made a difference by having the seams open or by having the seams sewed to the, or pressed to the side, if it made a difference at all when I go to sew in my circles. Didn't make a difference, so again, that's your choice. Decide which way works best for you. These, I'm just going to go ahead and press them toward the dark side, to the dark. So I'm just opening it up and giving them a little press. Just giving them a finger press, because when I take it to the iron, it'll lay a little bit easier. So I'm pressing toward the darker fabric. So I've got the darker fabric on top, and then I'm just giving it a finger press, not pressing too hard, not wanting to overstretch it, but giving it a little press. And again, to the dark side. All right, and I think I had it laid out like this. So now I'm just going to take 2 and put them on top of each other, and then get this one sewed, and then we'll do the last one. And then the last one. Okay, so I kind of pressed them all towards the dark side, so the last 2 haven't been pressed. So those are actually going to be pressed toward the light. And then this one. So generally I want all of my seams going in one direction, like this. And this is a time where you could take it over to your iron and give it a good press. And we'll go ahead and get that done and I'll be right back with you. All right, got it all pressed. All of my seams, I decided to go in one direction. So the next one is to go ahead and now we're going to do our little circle. So what you got to do, you know that this one here is the middle is this seam right here. So we don't really need to mark that one because we know that this is the middle. But we got to find the middle on our quarter circle. So I just go ahead and fold it in half. And then I'm going to give it a pinch and I'm going to find my middle right there. So I'm taking that little piece right there, that little fold, and now I am placing it right sides together, right there. Okay, so I found my middle and I've pinned it. Now, just so that you know, Martelli does have a product called the Curve Master Foot. And it works for 1/4 inch, and I believe that it works for 5/8 of an inch.
What you do is you cut the pie and you cut the square, you pin it in the middle, then you ease it. No pinning, no clipping, no easing. You cut it right side, corner to corner. Now I've already put it on my machine, we've got it started. We're gonna keep both sides together and we're gonna sew it all the way till we get to the end. And then when you're done, the foot does everything for you. And then when I flip this over, you can see how everything is perfect. See, it comes up to a point right there, and then it comes down. And you can do 5/8 or 1/4, depending on the project that you're doing. Go now and get your 1/4 inch Curve Master Presser Foot at martellinotions.com.
Now, I'm not going to use the Curve Master Foot for this because there might be a lot of you that don't have the Curve Master Foot. I want to show you how easy it is to do a curve like this on a regular sewing machine, because this is probably one of the simplest curves that you'll be doing, particularly when you're doing this very gradual curve right here. So going back to that, I just got it pinned right there at the center and I've matched up my edges, and that's just a temporary hold. That pin's not going to stay in there. So it's holding it there. Then I'm going to take this edge right here and I'm bringing it up to this edge right here. And I'm just matching it up right there on the edge. Now you could pin that if you want. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to match up that corner and that corner. I'm matching up those two pieces right there, because I'm going to start sewing at 1/4 inch right there on that edge. So this is what you're looking for, matched up right there, and you're going to start sewing at 1/4 inch all the way around, and then you're going to ease this in and you're just going to take it slow. This is not one of those speed demon projects. You're just going to go a little slow, and actually if you have a machine that's adjustable, you can adjust it down just a little bit to make it just a little bit slower. And you're going to hold this in one hand and hold it in the other, and it's going to ease itself in. I don't know if Zeke can get to that and show how there's a little bit of a different way of you holding it. But I'm going to go ahead and get this underneath here. Oh, and this is a project that you're probably going to need a set of tweezers for, because at the very end, it's very useful to have this little tweezer right here to kind of hold your final piece when you're getting close to the edge. So again, I've got my two pieces here. I'm kind of manipulating, it's a little fiddly here, but I'm manipulating it around. So I have my two edges right up, lined up against each other. I'm kind of hold it in place. So I've got my needle down on the fabric, and it's kind of caught, and the foot is up but the needle's down, and I've kind of move it where I can pivot. So I've grabbed it out from underneath here, and I've kind of got my finger on it right here. And now I'm just going to lower my feet, my foot, and then I'm just going to start sewing. I'm going to give it a little bit of a tag right here. And I'm going to just take it slowly, and it should just ease right in. I'm just keeping the edges of the curve and the edges of the other curve up against the edge of my foot to keep that 1/4 inch. And when I get to where I've just sewn just a little bit, then I'm going to be removing that pin. You'll get to where you won't even have to have that pin. You can mark it, and then you'll be able to see where your mark is, and you'll see how well you're doing as they just kind of line up. So here it is without the pin in it. And you got these two pieces that are going out like this, and what you're doing is just manipulating them and bringing it in as you're sewing. So I'm just going to take it slow and just let the machine pull it in. I'm not doing any pulling and let the machine do the work. And see, there was my little mark, and it's hitting right there where I need it to be. Just letting the machine pull it in. Still kind of doing this little pivot motion here. And I'm getting to where I'm going to have to grab my tweezers. I'm going to grab the top one with the tweezers, and I'm just going to let the machine pull it in. And I'm getting to right there at that edge, right here. So I'm rolling it over and let the machine just pull it in and come on off. And then when you go to flay it back, it just lays. It's gonna automatically force that seam to flay over. You don't even need to iron any of that. It's just going to be. You'll iron that in a minute when you go to the next step, because you do not have to iron this when we go to attach the next piece. So now we're going to go ahead and grab our big L. Now we're getting ready to sew that part on. So as we did with the half circle where we had found our middle, we already know where our middle is on this one, and it's this right here. It's this seam in the middle. You got middle right here. So you're going to take your big L and you're going to find your middle. So I'm just going to bring right sides together. And I'm finding my middle on that curve. I'm not stretching it or pulling it at all. I'm just giving it a pinch to mark where my middle is. Then I'm going to open it up. And if you want, you could mark with a pencil so you don't lose that spot. And now we're going to take it right sides together, and you're going to get your middle, your seam, and you're going to place it on there, and you're going to pin it. Now this one we're going to do a little bit different. I don't want you to fight so hard to make sure that you get this end all the way to this end, because it's not going to happen. This is a little bit bigger than this piece right here. So instead of starting here, we're going to start at the middle. We're going to sew to here, and then we're going to flip it over, and then we're going to sew it the other way. I found that was so much easier to do with this. I'm going to get this lined up just right, because we're going to end up trimming it anyway, and I don't want you to try to make sure the edges line up, because they don't. This is not going to line up. This is actually going to be shorter than the L, because we're going to be trimming that off anyway. Alright, so I've got right where my middle is. This is just the pinning, just to show it. But now I'm going to take it and I'm going to drop my needle down right there, 1/4 of an inch in. Right there. And now I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to ease it in on the way till I get to the very end, and then we're going to flip it over and we're going to do the other side. Again, have your tweezers ready for you. I'll do a little back tack right here. And I just kind of have this gathered up in my hand, and then this is kind of controlling it over here. So we're just taking these two edges and we're bringing them in. No stretching, no pulling, just letting it just ease in. Just forcing it to be a straight line. Now see, it is bigger. Don't fuss over that. I want it to do that. You want it to look like this. Just let it just go right on through to the edge. When we get to the edge, give it a back tack. This is such a gradual curve. I forgot that you really don't even need the tweezers for this section right here. So we just eased it in. Now we're going to take it and we're going to flip it upside down. And we're going to we're going to go ahead and drop our needle down, just maybe overlap our stitches by just a little bit. Do the same thing, kind of gather this side up in this hand, and then you're kind of controlling this side, because now we're trying to get these two together the same way. No stretching, no pulling, let the machine do the work, and you just work on lining this up as if you're working with a straight edge. Give it a little back tack, and then take your time and go through it. Just kind of, if you see, I'm just kind of letting my fingers just relax off of the top piece and just kind of let it pull itself through. Just kind of guiding it, keeping it right there at that quarter edge. Now I'm coming to the end, and knowing that it's going to be bigger, I'm just going to hold it till it gets to the very end. And then give it a back tack right at that very end. And that's it. And then when you go to iron it, it will automatically go in the way that it wants to. So we're just going to take this over to the iron, and we're going to iron it, and then we're going to get ready to square it up to 12 inches. Okay, so we got the block all ready to go. Now we got to get it to 12 inches square. So what I do is I just kind of line it up, and I know I got 20 to 32. I like to start with one good straight edge first, so I get it as close as I can. Well, I'm not having to trim off much here, and that's just where I'm going to get this extra off here. And so I've got it square on my mat. And I'm just going to get it to where I trim it off as little as possible right here on this side. Then I flip it around to the other side. And I've got to get to the 20, so it's be 12 inches. So I'm over here on my mat, it's the 32 mark. This is my 20. So I'm going to lay my ruler down, get this trimmed up here. Same thing here. Getting ready to trim this off right here. So I got a straight edge here. Just a little bit, it's got to come off. And then one more side to go. And just a little bit. And there is your finished block. Really easy to do. And it's also a very fun block. There's a lot of history to this block. I think everybody must have had a Grandma's fan quilt at one time. So this one's not trimmed up yet, but again, isn't that just pretty? And if you wanted to just do it any way that you want to make this block. So again, don't be intimidated by the Grandma's fan. It's really easy. I've seen some where they just do the whole process with applique. But this is a really great block to start with if you want to learn about sewing curves or easing in curves, because it's very forgiving. And we've made this template so it has a little bit of forgiveness to it. If you if you have a wider seam allowance, or if your seam allowance is a little bit narrow, then you know you're not going to be coming off the edge. You're going to be trimming it up anyway. So it just worked just perfect, even though this is a little bit big. I wouldn't change it because it gives me that a little bit more of allowance, particularly if you do it the way I told you. Instead of going from one edge to the other, start at the middle go to one side and do the other side, then you know it's going to be in there exactly how it's supposed to be centered for you to square it all up. Again, a fun block. If you have any questions, all you have to do is email me at quiltingwithlisa@gmail.com. Be sure to pick up the Grandma fan template set at Martelli Notions. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.